Welcome to the Working Tools Podcast, where today we'll be discussing Chapter 9 of Whither Are We Traveling, titled Bread or a Stone.
Ladies and gentlemen, brethren all, welcome to the Working Tools Podcast, a casual conversation around Freemasonry. First, it's important to note that our thoughts and opinions are our own and do not reflect those of our Grand Lodge or respective craft or concordant bodies. Please connect with us and ask questions via our website at theworkingtoolspodcast.com.
Today on the Working Tools Podcast, we only have three of the four of us. We have Worshipful Brother Jarrod Dunham from Penticton 147 up in lovely, I'm sure, although I've never been there, Penticton, British Columbia. Very Worshipful Brother David Colbeth from King Solomon number 60, and it's pretty nice, Auburn, Washington. And I'm Matt Appel, and I am a member of Mill Creek number 243, and we meet in the suburbs of Montlake Terrace, Washington. And today, as I said earlier, we'll be discussing Chapter 9, Bread or a Stone, from the Whither Are We Traveling paper, which I'm sure you've all listened to, thanks to Jarrod's mellifluous production of the readings of the papers. So I will start with the always best received question of, so what do you guys think?
Well, first of all, at some point we're going to have to remedy this, that you've never been to the Okanagan Valley. It's gorgeous.
It's lovely. I'm telling you, it is just to die for.
I've actually I've been to Banff and Lake Louise, and I actually drove
nowhere near the Okanagan.
Oh, is it? Okay. It's in the mountains in Canada, whatever, you know. It's in the Great White North.
Close enough.
We drove from Calgary across and then down into Washington one time. So
it's the down into Washington part that's the important part of that trip.
Because you wanted to get rid of me. I see how it is.
No, I'm saying, well, no, you can get, because there's different ways to get from Calgary across and then down.
I know we went through Kamloops.
Then you didn't go through the Okanagan.
Sorry. We will have to rectify that.
You will have to in 2025. Is that when our Grand Lodge is in? Yeah, 2025. If you can wait that long.
Grand Lodge is in Kelowna in 2025.
Yeah, 2025.
Nice. We'll have to work that out.
Yeah. And it's the last week in June.
It's usually the weekend after.
It's the weekend closest to St. John's Day.
Oh, that's even better. Oh.
Those
that can't see me. I will look up bewilderment. This is 27th of June, right?
Freemason, you don't know when your two St. John's days are?
I was getting mixed up between June and December. Which day it is in December versus June?
Oh, okay.
27th of June?
Like the
17th or something.
17th of June, 27th of December.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's usually falls on the weekend after ours.
So now that we've completely digressed.
Yeah, exactly. We haven't even gotten to talk about the paper at all, other than me mentioning the title.
So I was cajoling with these guys earlier that basically I agree with this chapter, and we're done.
Thank you for joining us. Well,
most of it.
Yeah. Some of it. Okay, reading through it, I see it. This is an interesting thing with like reading through this one and it being, a 60-year-old paper. We done that. Like we have up here in our jurisdiction. I mean, we have our directors of Masonic education in every lodge. We have our district education officers, and we have the Ashlar College of Freemasonry. So, I mean, we kind of have education coming out of our yin yangs. Actually, but I do have a question. Do you guys have a lodge of education and research down in the state in Washington?
We have two lodges of research, one of which I'm a member of.
Oh, okay. And how active are they?
Long pause.
It used to be more. So I will start by saying I know nothing about the Spokane Lodge of Research.
Right.
I know it exists, but beyond that, I have no idea how active or inactive they are. The Walter F. Meyer number, I want to say 281, is that meets in Seattle. I'm a member, like I said. It's they meet quarterly. They have people talk and stuff, but they used to put out like a book, like like Harrodom, kind of, not quite that nice, but along those lines, kind of, proceedings and papers and that sort of stuff. And they really don't do that much anymore.
Right. Because we have two up here, one in Victoria, which apparently isn't very active, and then there's the one down in Vancouver, which is the one that hosts our Grand Masonic Day. At least I think they're the ones that host our Grand Masonic Day every year. So,
which, as of this recording, is coming up, but unfortunately, as of the broadcast, will be long
past.
Yeah. So hopefully it was great, because I think we're going to go.
Are you guys going?
I'm trying to talk Matt into it.
I need to talk to the knower of things in the other room there, but I'm hoping yes.
I may have to work some extra long hours during the week just so I could have a day off in April.
Ooh,
because that would I was.
It's probably longer for you. It's longer for you to get there than it is for us, though, isn't it?
It's,
I think so.
To Vancouver's about a 4-hour drive.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's about 3 through. Well, it's probably about the same for me.
But you guys have that lovely I-5 corridor, and I've got the mountains, which this weekend got shut down because of snow.
Yeah, the thing we also have is the border crossing, though, so that may undo any advantage.
And digression again.
Yep.
Sorry. When I was reading through this one, as I said, that it seems we've taken this to heart. We've got a lot, and I mean, I'm not saying that just as someone who's involved in education up here in our Grand Lodge, but it's we have a lot of education up here. However,
but are people expected to participate? Is that I think, and maybe I wove it into my own mind, and that's what I read. But the idea of expectations.
When you say expected to participate, meaning like if we have a discussion in Lodge, people will actually venture forth an opinion.
Well, that, but do they also, you have this Ashlar College. Does everybody do the Ashlar College? Is there an expectation of certain things every Saturday morning? You're going to go and have an educational discussion, a real philosophical discussion, or an understanding of what the degrees are about, or what where are Masons, or.
I think. See, I like the way we've done it up here because it's that. And I'm gonna relate this to a story of teaching people how to fence, because this is always a big issue. Is that I run classes, I teach people how to fence up here, historic fencing, and the issue that we always run into is the new person shows up and you have to run them through the basics while everyone else sort of stands on the sidelines, or is because they've already learned this stuff, and so every time you get a new person in, it kind of sort of jostles your lesson plan a little bit because you've got to get people caught up. Whereas with things like our Ashlar College of Freemasonry, a new Mason can apply and take these courses outside of the lodge to have an extra thing to help them sort of get up to speed on what things are doing. But it's also, and it's good for people who are not very self-directed, who will just I'm different. I tried the Ashlar College and it didn't work as much for me because my interests I'm not I don't like taking a course, where they say, well, you're going to learn this, where I'd rather just read a book and sort of see where that leads me. So, the expectation that of a new Mason is that, a lot of lodges do at least monthly, what we call more light nights, where they can come to the lodge hall and ask questions, and if we think they can handle the answer, we give it to them. So
is there a series of educational classes, though, that a new Mason, an apprentice, he must learn these things other than just hearing the lecture and then moving on to the next degree and maybe memorization? Are there certain things that he must do to be able to go to the next degree?
Well, I mean,
on and on.
Yeah, other than our proof up, not really. But I mean, and this is the one thing that I disagreed with this article, with this chapter this time, was because he had this one paragraph where he talks about, we recite, and then, if the new Mason doesn't want to memorize, and I'm like, but didn't a few chapters ago he complain about the fact that people need to learn rituals? So I feel sorry for the master of his lodge, because if the festive board is bad, it's the master's fault. If there is an education in lodge, it's the master's fault. If no one knows their ritual, it's the master's fault. And I'm like, it seems like an awful lot to lay at the foot of the master of a lodge.
There is the part of the article where you're just talking about where he says like we have 57 varieties of different Masonic education, and I wrote next to it, my notes to myself on that paragraph are yes and no, because I feel like I want choices in my Masonic education. Like I want to be able to go to whatever, do the Scottish Rite Southern Jurisdictions Master Craftsman program or Ashlar College, although I'm looking at their website and we're not eligible to do it, just for the record, David. So you can set aside your dreams there. So I want all those options.
I'm going to make my own.
Right? There you go. Another Grand Lodge resolution. Anyway, we have, so I want all those options, right? I want people to be able to find what speaks to them in, however, some people, I learn well in a classroom environment. Other people really don't, and that's fine. I'm all for the different options. One of the things actually that bugs me is that, and I think it's related to this 57 varieties comment, and another comment he makes later on, is that we change too often. Like we've lamented this before, that the master of the lodge or the grand master changes at once a year, and then you suddenly oh wait, we're not doing that program anymore, we're doing this program, and oh wait, not that program, now we're doing this program. And you don't, sometimes these things don't take off in a year. Sometimes they take some building and some refinement. Oh, it didn't work great, but it worked okay, maybe if we tweak it here and tweak it there, we can make this thing work better. And a lot of times you just don't get that commitment to a 3 or 5 year process that I think would help a lot of these programs do better.
Yeah, I guess the thing I would say back is that his section, he talks about, first graders not handed a set of books, which they'll tell you how to needs to know how to get a high school diploma. You can't expect, in my opinion, you can't expect an apprentice mason or a brand new guy coming through to just know what books to pick up. Or now he might ask, we might give him suggestions, but I feel like there should be at least like a minimal course of instruction to take a man through from one degree to the next, and from the next degree to the next, and then beyond the third degree, if he wants something more, then he can research it, or even in between, if he's, some guys are really fast at learning 90-day wonders, and so if they are able to absorb and contemplate and get through that initial instruction between the degrees, then yeah, if they want to venture out a little bit. But we've talked about it for 5 years now, lots of different things. So how can a person moving from an apprentice to fellow craft mason really be able to comprehend more than what's just in the lectures or in the work that's been given just in the first degree?
But why should they?
Why should they understand it?
What? Okay, so here,
or be given some more context?
Here's my counterpoint to that.
Yeah,
is that they need to learn the work first before they can understand it.
Yeah,
and so the question I always say I have for you is that, is it not enough for them to know the work to progress? Because once again, we're talking about a lifelong commitment. You don't need to know everything all at once. No, you need to know enough to be able to not commit a faux pas in lodge.
So there's a great example. So maybe there should be basic etiquette taught.
But it is. Oh, okay. I shouldn't say, but it is. But I mean, is that not the purpose of the mentor, is to guide them? Because it's so hard to do this without knowing A, what you guys ask in your prove ups, and B, talking too much about the prove ups. Because there's in the prove up that Stephen and I do, because we do ancient craft work, it's long, and it literally, you in order to move on to the next degree, you basically have to explain in open lodge what happened in that degree. So you have to know and show certain signs and tokens in order to move. So as you're learning your memory work for your prove up, you are learning the basics, I think, what I call the basics for an entered apprentice.
I agree with that. And we have a similar catechism that's lengthy.
Yeah.
Not all lodges do it because it's not required by our code. There's some very Jarrod just went bug-eyed. Our Constitution, our code doesn't only has a very limited requirement, and then they have the magic words that the lodge is the sole judge of proficiency.
Right.
With these exceptions, they have to be able to do these things, these
Right.
few things, but which is not, I would evangelize that our Constitution, our code says there is one standard work. In our case, there's one standard work, you will do no other. And in the standard work, there isn't a short form of the posting lecture, of the prove up. There isn't a short form. It's the whole thing. There isn't like, oh, this is optional, this is optional. But then the code contradicts itself because it says the lodge is the sole judge of proficiency. But then it contradicts itself because it says, oh, no, you need to have these minimum items. But it says there's only one standard work and you'll do no other, and there's no short form in the standard work. So, yeah, I'm trying to get some resolutions passed or through to be reviewed at our communication, and resolutions are a hot button for me right now. And the standard work and the language and the code and all that kind of stuff. But I guess what I'm thinking is, some elementary level education. Like we have a lodge officer's handbook, and so in there you could teach them some basic etiquette. And yes, we have a mentor's guide as well. Is it well advertised and well used? I don't think so. There's actually I think it may have been carefully not on purpose, but indirectly cut out of the new educational methods of which I'm trying to get put back in. But yeah, it says this is how you should greet people. This is how you should stand in lodge. This is how you should, all these kind of fundamental things. And so, no, I'm not trying to say that a guy should learn everything or know everything. And yes, he's going to learn some of that stuff, some of the basics of his degree in his catechism, in his proving up. But he's really, just like in the degree, they get overwhelmed with lots of information. Just like in the prove up, in the catechism, you're really focused on just memorizing it, getting it to the next level. And then once you get there, you don't necessarily pause and study it. You go on to the next one. And then now you're in this massive information overload in the degree and the lecture and all that. And then they're required to learn the next catechism. And there's no time. So maybe it poses the question, I think we've talked about it before, the speed of masonry. How fast should you go through the degrees? I mean, what should it really be a 3-year process? Or longer or something? I don't know.
But you kind of hit a point there when you said that it's information overload, because it's just dumped on you. First degree, second degree, third degree. And I think time is the key to this, but time in that you go through the degrees and then you sit as a member of lodge and watch others go through the degrees. And that's when you pick up the things. I don't really think that there needs to be, for the basics, I think and I know people don't necessarily learn through osmosis, but you do learn by going to lodge, watching the degrees, having things click in your mind, so I don't know if we need a course of education for that, like a rigid, like a specific course of education for that. I think and we've talked about this in mentoring when we were talking about mentoring, is that you basically, that's what you need is someone to be able to point things out to you, or to, when you have that look on your face, ask you that question, is there something that's confusing you? I mean, part of as a lodge director of Masonic education, when we're installed, the first thing we're told is we are expected to instigate informed discussion.
I like that.
Yeah. And I think and I always focus on that one word, is the informed discussion, so that it takes the onus away from me as director of education and puts it on the rest of the members of the lodge to go forth and seek information, and then come back to lodge, and we'll vet it for whether we agree or disagree, or, maybe it's something we haven't seen before.
I thought you focused on the word instigate.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah,
Rabble-rouser.
Rabble-rouser. That's me.
I guess I'm not saying that everybody has to have like a degree, no pun intended, in masonry, that now you can put on my wall, oh yes, I've mastered the 3 degrees of masonry or whatever. It's just that I think there's a need for some structure if a lodge wants to give more or something different. Just like 6 steps. Here's a framework to use. If you want to do something different but similar that fits better with your lodge culture, go for it. But just use something. Here's a framework. A lot of lodges, I think, don't have any framework, or they don't realize there's a framework. And so I think that's what I'm looking for is, here, if you don't know what else to do, here's what's to do. Or if you get into a lodge and the lodge doesn't support that for whatever reason, and you want it, you can plug into it. And I think that's a role of the Grand Lodge, that Grand Lodge could help with that.
How often in your meetings, and I'm going to assume that in your meetings, or much like our meetings, there comes a point when the master asks if anyone has anything for the good of Freemasonry. How often have you stood up at that point, if the lodge hasn't done anything on education, and said something or started a discussion about something, because it's the perfect time?
So I would absolutely. And the problem is that I don't want to call out any guys specifically, but there's some of the people that have been in the East, or even other lodges. I won't even talk about my lodge, any lodge. They have chosen, for whatever reason, not to have education. And without having talked with the master beforehand to, in my opinion, take that opportunity or delegation or whatever you want to call it, that away from him. Now, if he had come to me before and said, "Hey, David, would you be willing to talk about education tonight?" Okay, sure. Or if I had talked to him beforehand, say, "Hey, Worship Master, I would like to talk about this thing tonight." That's great. But just to kind of break out in the end and say, "Oh, I'm Mr. Education," in the good of the order. Now, if that was the lodge's custom, if that's where those kind of things came up, maybe, and that could become a new custom. I don't know. What I do think should happen. We have all these Grand Lodge committeemen and officers and all these. How many do you think there are? 100, 150?
If you include all the committees and stuff, yeah, something like that.
Probably, yeah. So I would bet at every lodge meeting, there's got to be 2 to 5 people in every lodge that have some connection with a committee or with an officer, or some responsibility, either in Grand Lodge or in a very closely tied concordant group that's Masonic specific, Scottish Rite, York Rite, those kind of things. There's got to be 2 to 5 guys. What I think should happen is, during that closing, part of that, or the announcements, is that is the responsibility of that committee person or leader, if you will, in those organizations, to do exactly what you said and to have a message. Now, there's 5 of them. They don't need 5 messages. But maybe amongst them, they should decide, okay, who's the ranking person, or who has the most interesting topic, or whatever. But yes, I think that a Grand Lodge, or a ranking member, if you will, I hate to just say that without some backing to it, but somebody that seems to be there with some, in our case, with a white badge or with some authority, they should have some kind of message about what their committee's doing, about what their organization's doing, that has some Masonic connection. Why were you asked and agreed to participate in what you're doing, whatever it is? In my case, I'm on 3 committees. If I should stand up and talk about what's happening in the Masonic world of real estate, why it's important to maintain your buildings, why it's important to make sure you have leases in place, whatever, some 30-second bullet. Now, would I do that in my own lodge because I talk a lot in my own lodge? I don't know. They want to tell me shut up. But but if I'm visiting a lodge, I think it is almost a responsibility of that officer or committee person to stand and say, Worship Master, thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm here on behalf of the Veteran Services Organization, Veteran Services Committee. We are doing this and this and this, and we hope that your lodge can connect with us or whatever, or I'm a trustee on the Washington Masonic Services Trustee Board. We want to connect with you because of this, or I'm on the Rainbow Foundation Board, and we are building a legacy of funds to support the Rainbow in eternity, through eternity, whatever, right? There should be some kind of little message. It's not education that you're asking for necessarily, but in a indirect sense, it is, because they're teaching about the ancillary elements of Masonry and why those are important. I'm giving air quotes here. Why is it important to have 150 people on committees and then just get a white badge and get introduced? I don't know. I could go on.
What is this white badge you're talking of?
It's Grand Lodge committeemen get white name badges that say you have your committee name on it.
Oh, you guys are.
So when you go around and you see a white badge, you go, "Oh, he's on the committee, or he's an officer, or he's a something or other. He's a Grand Lodge person."
Our lodge would confuse you because we all have white badges. We're one big, very large. No. And I know I've asked this question before. Do you guys have someone in your lodge, like a specific position that is? I see shaking. Okay, that's what so maybe that's something, because I find it interesting that because you keep referring to your master as being the one that's instigating education.
Now, I think he could or should delegate that. I don't think it has to be his responsibility to do it himself.
Well, it's not his responsibility. It's the officer's responsibility. Well, sorry, our officer's responsibility. His job is just to make sure they're doing their job.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think a good master should delegate that responsibility to somebody. And so even though we don't have specifically a station that's the lodge education officer, we certainly could say, "Hey, Joe, I want you to be the lodge education officer this year and come up with certain tasks, whatever." My hope next year is to have some of our newest Masons take 2 or 3 words and do some study. Give us 5 minutes of what you've learned about that, and 3 to 5 questions that we can discuss. We have our Shrink the Lodge. 3 to 5 questions that we can discuss about that and the things that you've learned. And I'm hoping to assign that over the next, 6 or 8 months so that they have time to prepare for it.
So I have thoughts.
Uh-oh.
The first of which is my opinion. So I actually have a whole speech about this. I don't know if back when they made me chairman of research and education for a year before that ended, there was I got to talk with Grand Lodge once on behalf of the committee, and I had this whole speech about how there was a tree and there were roots and there were fruits. It was a whole thing, but the Masonic education is Masonry. That's the whole point. Nobody joins the lodge to pay their dues or to hear the minutes or to whatever, to vote on things or whatever. That's not why anyone joins a lodge, right? They join to improve themselves, hopefully. Maybe they do join for those other reasons. But that's the point of Masonry, is Masonic education. I have issues with what sometimes happens when it's happened in my lodge. We're going to have I should know the officer position titles, but I don't. We're going to have the honcho from the local Royal Arch chapter come in, and he's going to talk about Royal Arch. And he talks about the fact that the Royal Arch chapter meets in the Edmonds building, and they meet on the third Tuesday, and their dues are $75, and it's really interesting, and you guys should all join. I learned nothing there. I guess technically I learned that they meet in Edmonds and it costs $75 a year, but really, that did not improve me in any way, shape, or form. Masonic education needs to be more than just. Maybe actually, like he says in this article, maybe we need to name it something else. Maybe, educating people about what the finance committee does is not unimportant, but it isn't Masonry. Educating people on how to improve themselves is the important job of Masonry. And I think we too often fall into the former and not enough of the latter.
Yes.
And my other thought is that education should be first. The master should, or the education officer, or whoever. Too often we get to the end of the meeting and it's been an hour and 45 minutes, and it gets to be, Brother Bill was going to talk about whatever, the rough and perfect ashlar, but guys, it's really late. Hey, Bill, how about next time? And it just never happens. And that bugs me. It should be first, and other stupid things should get pushed out of meetings.
Yes, kudos to our master this year. He's moved ours immediately after opening. We go into Shrink the Lodge and have a discussion. I really like that format. Yeah.
I will say something else. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, we could certainly talk more and more. I think we've diverged a little bit, or gone off topic again a little bit, and that he's specifically bread or stone. They're asking for bread. The people that are coming, he's talking about the people that are coming in, they're asking to be fed, to be given knowledge, and instead we're giving them these stones or these things that we think are knowledge.
But you give a man a loaf, he eats for a day. If you teach a man to bake,
he can cook a fish.
So part of and
throw stones at fish.
I don't know. I dislike the term Masonic education. It should be just education, because there's Masonic education in education, but then there's other things that are not necessarily Masonic that we need to educate people about. But yeah, where was I going with this point? Crap, lost my train of thought. Hey, I'm getting old. Almost 50,
Go ahead, Jarrod.
He was just talking like an old man.
I was just talking like an old. No, I was just thinking.
I thought you were leading somewhere there.
I was, and now I've totally lost my train of thought. Oh, it'll come back to me later.
So, we're running out of time, but I kind of feel like there's more here. Do we want to come back for another one?
I think so. I think we could. Yes, because I got some other notes that I wouldn't mind talking about.
All right, then. So, since David says we're doing it, I guess we're doing it.
Oh, hail the mighty David.
Thank you all for listening to the Working Tools podcast. As always, we encourage you to contact us on social media and wherever those places where we are. And we look forward to conversing with you about things. And we look forward to talking to you again on the Working Tools podcast. Goodbye.